You sit there and you are seen as as an embodiment of Western values, of Western culture, not least because you are seen as an American organisation. The hierarchy, the top tier, many of the senior figures within Human Rights Watch are actually people who've been in the American government.
Well, look, I'm an American, there's no denying that, but we have 77 nationalities on staff. We have offices around the world, people based in 45 different countries. The people who speak for the organization, the people who represent the organization, are more often not American than are by a long shot. So I don't think, I think increasingly we're seen as an international organization that happens to be based in New York.
You're trying to do that, though, but that's partly because of the criticisms that are levelled against you, not least by the Nobel Peace Prize laureates, Adolfo Pérez Esquivel and Mary Maguire.
No, it actually has nothing. We've been doing this for years. I think it's a more effective organization to be an international organization. This is something I've believed in for decades.
And since George Soros, one of your significant investors, said you need to be more international.
No, you got that backwards. I approached him and asked for funding to help that happen, which he very graciously gave us.
So, because one of the point made by these Nobel laureates is that what they're suggesting, and we should give an example. You have employed people who have been in the American government, who go back into the US government, the likes of Tom Malinowski, who he's even said, and this man working in Human Rights Watch, under limited circumstances, there's a legitimate place for CIA renditions.
Yeah. Well, no. What Tom said was that rendition, not for torture, but for legitimate justice, is fine. But take Tom Malinowski. This was the guy who was a foreign policy speechwriter for President Clinton. He then worked for Human Rights for 12 years. He was an extraordinarily effective Washington director. He's now gone back and is the lead human rights person in the Obama administration and has been doing a fantastic job in places like Burma.
So it was absolutely right that he comes to work for you, then goes back into the American government. It doesn't matter how that's seen.
Well, sometimes the most effective advocates with the government are the people who know the government. So my concern is this somebody who believes in our principles?
Why aren't you employing from the Syrian government then on that basis?
Well, because the Syrian government is abusive. Tom Malinowski has not been abusive. He stood up for human rights principles throughout his entire life. So you got to make distinctions. Let's not be sort of falsely equivalent.
But you have to admit that the perception is not just Tom Malinowski. It could be Miguel Diaz. There are plenty of people such that the call from these Nobel laureates is that you end this open door policy. You don't employ people who have worked in the American government or who could go back to work there.
Yeah. Well, my view, look, I used to work for the American government. I was a prosecutor before I came to Human Rights Watch. People have lots of backgrounds, and what I look for is, are they committed to the principles? Are they able to apply the principles fairly and objectively? Can they do the work to protect people and their human rights? And that's my principal concern.
So you won't comply with that?
We have not, no.
And you don't intend to. It's absolutely fine. And it doesn't matter if Human Rights Watch is perceived as American?
Well, I don't think it is perceived as American. I think increasingly it's perceived as an international organization, which is what we aspire to be.